Yo, what up, a-holes? Thank you for tuning into the Holistic A-Hole podcast. My name is Eric Levi, and I'm the Holistic A-Hole, the mommy blogger with balls, the inconvenient truth of health, and a certified nutritional therapy practitioner. What's up, everybody? How you doing? Hope you're doing great. Hope you're having a great day, evening, morning, afternoon, whatever you're doing. Hope you're making it a good one. Hope it's a good one because I got a good one for you today. Can you believe it? I got a real good one for you. Me sitting down with the master of nutrition himself, Chris Masterjohn, PhD. We sat down for a little bit. We chatted about nutrition and all kinds of stuff about health and diets and detoxification, and I mean, we just got into it. We really got into the weeds with a lot of this nutrition stuff. And I'll tell you, this is one you're probably going to want to sit with your iPhone notebook open, or, your laptop or your computer. You're going to want to take notes because, like, I myself, I have to listen back to this one a few times because there was a lot of very good little nuggets of health and nutrition. I would go so far as to say not just nuggets, but full-on boulders of just great science-backed, evidence-based nutrition information. This isn't stuff that you can Google. You know what I mean? This isn't stuff that your dumb friends on Facebook can tell you about, Dr. Chris Masterjohn. I mean, this guy's a PhD. If you don't know who he is, I highly recommend doing one of a few things. Either checking out his website, chrismasterjohnphd.com. Go to his YouTube page. He's got, just videos on every nutrient you can think of, right? We're talking about vitamin A, B vitamins. He's talking about methylation, glutathione, niacin, like all the stuff that you look at on the labels and you're like, what the hell is that? It's got niacin. It's got to be good. He's telling you exactly what that stuff is and the best way to get it and why it's good for you. So definitely go to his website, chrismasterjohnphd.com. I highly recommend. He's also got this cool thing called the Testing Nutritional Status Ultimate Cheat Sheet, which he talks about a little bit at the end of the podcast, but I actually have myself, and if you are a health nerd, you have to have this. If you're not a health nerd, but you just want to know more about health, you're just sick of just getting lost in Google and looking at blogs, and you're on WebMD, and you're like, none of this makes any sense. Go get the Ultimate Cheat Sheet from Chris Masterjohn, the Testing Nutritional Status. You can go to chrismasterjohnphd.com/Eric Levi. That's me, ERIKLEVI. And you'll save 20% off of the Testing Nutritional Status Ultimate Cheat Sheet. That's a really good deal. For not a lot of money, you can have, basically the notes to a masterclass of nutrition. So go pick that up. And then the other cool thing is the new Chris Masterjohn 30-day Vitamins and Minerals 101 course. Another thing I've enrolled in myself. Basically what you do is you just go on to, you can just get this through Facebook Messenger. So just click on Facebook Messenger or click on the link that I have in my show notes. And for this, you're going to go to holisticahole.com/175 because that is the number of the episode. And I'll have a link to join Dr. Chris Masterjohn's Facebook Messenger and Facebook Messenger Vitamins and Minerals 101 course, which is awesome. Again, another resource to just enlighten yourself on nutrition. That's what this is all about. It's all about the knowledge being the power. So make sure you go pick those things up through my links. Go to the show notes, holisticahole.com/175. And I'll have them right there in the podcast notes. You know what I'm talking about. They're in the podcast players. Also, if you're new here to the podcast, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. We got great episodes coming out every week. And if you love the podcast, go on iTunes, leave a 5-star review. And I'm not gonna talk anymore about the podcast. I'm just gonna let you listen to it and enjoy it. I know you're going to. So sit back, grab yourself something to write with, listen to this a couple times, really absorb what Dr. Masterjohn's saying, and enjoy our talk. All right, and we are here with Dr. Chris Masterjohn, PhD. Going to talk about some nutrition and health stuff. This is exciting. Thanks for coming on the Holistic A-Hole podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, for sure. This is awesome. We're here in New York City.
I've been too much holistic, not enough a-hole in my career so far. So this is a good step forward.
Yeah, we got to get you some more a-hole here. Actually, we're all a-holes here, you know? Yeah. And it's funny because some people are very offended by that title. Like, I've asked several people to come on here, and they're like, I think that rubs me the wrong way. And it's like, you understand it's just a word. It's okay.
Everyone's got one.
Yeah. So cool. So this is awesome. I've been watching your YouTube channel, listening to your podcast, definitely have picked up, an insane amount of knowledge about health and nutrition. And, what I love about what you do is you have a ton of knowledge about health and nutrition, and it really feels like you are trying to explain this to the common person. Like you're trying to take this high-level academic, health and nutrition knowledge that we really should all know and break it down into bits and pieces that we can all handle.
Yeah, that's what I see myself doing. I think my real core strength is immersing myself in details and coming up with new ideas. And I do that at a few levels. Like I really love spending time just we were talking before the show, I want to turn biochemistry into a video game, right? Like I really love immersing myself in really technical stuff and then finding the people who need the really technical information and come with innovative ways to help them understand it better. I think that playing with my ideas, innovating and creating are a key strength of mine. I also think teaching is a key strength of mine. And so when I can combine those, I really love that. But then, in the broader world, I feel like there's a gap where there's a lot of people who need really simple information. And there's a lot of people who are willing to give that really simple information. But then there's people like me who are really good with the high-level technical stuff and the deep stuff, and there's just not many people trying to bridge that gap. So one of the things that I'm trying to do right now is bridge that gap and say, okay, I can immerse myself in this detail, come up with new ideas, but how do I translate this in a way that is simplified for the average person who wants the good idea but doesn't want all the technical detail? And that's one of the bridges I'm trying to make. Detail
schmetails. Yeah.
Although I really think that the stuff that I try to make easy really is intermediate and not easy. So I'll do more on making more bridges in the future.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing a good job. Like I was just, because I listen to a lot of your stuff that comes out, and you had this podcast about microdosing alcohol, which I thought was funny because it was like, not only was it like, I didn't know you can microdose alcohol, but now we're figuring out how to get alcohol in the context of nutrition.
If you drink kombucha, you microdose alcohol without knowing it.
That's hilarious. Yeah, and there's a lot of sober people are just crushing like 5 kombuchas a day.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm done drinking, but I can't get off this kombucha.
Yeah, it's at least half a drink.
Yeah. So let me start from kind of asking you a little bit about you before we get into nutrition here. Why nutrition? Why is this such a passion of yours, or a lane you chose over, being a researcher or being, even you used to be a professor? Why now into this world of teaching people online about nutrition?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that nutrition is a passion of mine. I think it's a lane I chose. You gave me 2 options there. So nutrition is a lane I chose. My passions, the passions that I'm bringing into that lane are understanding, defining, creating, and innovating. Those are my passions. And and I mix those, right? So I creatively understand and define things. I see things in new ways. Um, and the reason I chose the nutrition lane, though, is that's a little story. So it starts with me as a teenager seeing my mom, who was in pain every night and not sleeping because she had fibromyalgia. And I was often not sleeping because she was moaning in pain. Like it was bad enough that it just permeated the house. And she got into macrobiotics, into yoga, into Tai Chi, into herbs, and all kinds of things. And I can't really put my finger on exactly what did the trick, but I saw her recover to the point where she was no longer in pain every night. And that made a big impression on me about the power of nutrition and lifestyle to impact the health of someone in a much bigger way than I would have thought was possible before that. That interest got me into trouble. So I experimented with a lot of different diets. One of those eventually, after a few years, was veganism. I thought that I would save I thought that I would save the ecology, the environment. I thought that I'd save the animals, and I thought that I'd save my health. Instead, my teeth fell apart, my mind fell apart. There were anxiety disorders that were just a mere nuisance when I was a teenager that were 10x worse when I was vegan, to the point of being, I was never diagnosed with anything, but I would say borderline psychotic.
How old were you when you were a vegan?
When I went vegan when I was 18, and I was probably either 20 or 21 when I stopped being a vegan. Actually, technically, I was vegetarian for those 2 years, and I was vegan for a year in the middle. So I had convinced I read Diet for a New America by John Robbins, which was a pro-vegan book, and I jumped into the shallow side of the pool and became a lacto-ovo vegetarian, convinced my girlfriend that she should too.
That's eggs and milk.
Eggs and milk, but no meat, no flesh. And I convinced my girlfriend that she should too. I gave her the book, and then she read the book and was like, "Why aren't we vegan?" And so she convinced me to be vegan. So by the time I went vegan, it was 6 months into being vegetarian, and when I came out of veganism, I basically swam over from the deep side of the pool to the shallow side of the pool again, and then took a step out with fish, then took the next step out. But it was in the worst part of it, there were times where I was afraid to eat any of the food in my house because I thought that it was all drugged or poisoned. And I would start examining the packaging of something, looking for the sign of tampering. And I might not find it for 20 minutes, but then I accidentally rip it. And then I'm not sure if I ripped it or if it was there the whole time. And so then I that's my evidence that there's something wrong with it. And then I get very angry at the food for not being able to be eaten, and I get very angry at myself for not being able to eat the food, and I throw the food across the room in anger.
Was this vegan food, or was this like
yeah,
non-vegan
this was like
food?
the plastic wrapper on my veggie burger.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so during this time, I didn't even remember this fact until, not the one I'm about to tell you, until I was talking to my mom about it a few months ago. She told me that some 6 or 7 times she had brought me to the emergency room when I was in the height of a panic attack and demanded to be brought to the emergency room.
Wow.
And I didn't remember any of those times. Then after I thought about it a lot, I started to remember one of those times. And I remember, I can remember being hooked up to the heart monitor and it freaking me out because my pulse was so high and that was causing me anxiety. I remember that. And I remember that it went through a long beep when my heart skipped a beat and I started freaking out and yelled for the doctor to come in. I remember that now, but I still don't remember that 6 or 7 times. So my memory from that time is really, really fuzzy.
Wow.
So I definitely had some neurological stuff going on that I still don't know the full details and extent of it. But the point at which everything changed, there was an intellectual turning point and there was an experiential turning point. So the intellectual turning point was I had recently gone into the dentist, found out I had over a dozen cavities and needed 2 root canals. And I'm working as an undergraduate in the dining hall, and my boss gives me a pamphlet that talks about the work of Weston Price. Weston Price was the first research director for what became the American Dental Association, and he did 25 years of laboratory and clinical research on the causes and consequences of tooth decay over the turn of the 20th century. He decided that at the time, nutrition in America was at its bottom point, and everyone had tooth decay. He wanted to find people that didn't, and there were reports from anthropologists that there were many people in different parts of the globe that were isolated from modern society who had perfect teeth. And so he decided to go find them. And in doing so, he became a pioneer in nutritional anthropology. And he documented the transition from traditional diets to what he called the displacing foods of modern commerce: white flour, white sugar, syrups, canned goods, and white rice, that were basically invading all these traditional cultures. And he documented the physical degeneration that ensued. And teeth were his primary expertise. So expertise. I just said expertise.
Expertise. Nice. That's the name of this podcast.
Yeah.
Expertise.
That's a good name for a podcast.
Yeah.
Teeth were his primary expertise. And so that was what he focused on, but he called his book Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, not Nutrition and Tooth Decay, because what he also documented through his own examinations and also talking to doctors who had other expertises, maybe in cancer, for example, that just everything we would associate with chronic degenerative disease, a lot of things that we take for granted as things that happen as you age, were things that were essentially caused by adopting the displacing foods of modern commerce. Now, that point, I think, is obvious to you and me and most of these people, that if you take good food and you replace it with white flour, white sugar, syrups, canned goods, and white rice, and that's all you're eating, then your body's going to fall apart. Like, that's sort of like, duh. Like,
Sure.
You know, whether you're vegan, you're paleo, you're whatever you are, like, that's probably an obvious point nowadays. It wasn't that obvious back then because they were just discovering the vitamins back then. So it wasn't super obvious then. But what was not obvious to me, what really did constitute an intellectual turning point, was Price's description of what they had been eating on their traditional diets, how they went out of their way to procure foods that were rich in fat-soluble vitamins. And they didn't know what fat-soluble vitamins were, but that's how he described what they were searching for. What they were searching for were foods like liver and other organ meats, egg yolks, shellfish, small animals like frogs and insects that they would eat whole. And I look at this and I'm like, first of all, this is the first point where I ever thought that valuable nutrition came from animal foods. I'd always thought like protein came from meat, calcium came from milk, vitamins and minerals vitamins and other minerals came from vegetables. Mm-hmm. And, what I learned from the vegan literature was that everyone thinks we need more protein than we need, and everyone thinks we need more calcium than we need, right? So this is the first appreciation that I have of like, oh, you get this vitamin from liver, Mm-hmm. But then the other thing was, even when I was an omnivore, I wasn't eating liver. I wasn't eating that much shellfish that often. I wasn't eating other organ meats. I wasn't eating bones. So I'm learning about all these foods that none of my omnivore friends were eating. And so I wasn't just going back to omnivore. I was going back to like super omnivore, like nutrient-dense omnivore. And that was my intellectual turning point. I started modifying my diet according to the principles I learned from Price. The experiential turning point was I can isolate the moment where I realized everything changed to this one moment where I was in the dining hall. I see this guy pick up a stack of plates and take the plate from the middle. And I think to myself, I judge him. I think to myself, man, that's weird. Like, why didn't he just take the plate on top? And I walk away. A couple seconds later, I remember that 3 months ago, I always took the plate from the middle because I was scared of the one on top. Not only that, but that was real moderate compared to the other things I would do.
Yeah.
Like I would spend 20 minutes looking for a glass that was clean enough to drink out of all the clean glasses. And I just told you the story a minute ago about me throwing the food across the room because I couldn't eat any of it.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing like, I mean, who reads a newspaper anymore? But sometimes I have those free papers on the street. I'll never take the one from the top. I always take the paper from the middle. And I remember in the cafeteria, I did the same thing if I go to a buffet or something.
Yeah.
Always the plate from the middle.
Yeah, so it's not that irrational. Like the plate
Yeah.
on top is exposed to more germs and dust and whatever. So, but what I think is interesting about the story is not, I'm not really making the point that it's hyper irrational to take the plate from the middle. It's more about how much my mind had changed without me realizing it, right? So at that point, it didn't even occur to me that you would want to not take the plate on top.
Mm-hmm.
But 3 months before that, I couldn't eat anything because all of it was poisoned, right? Like, and I did not have any consciousness of how that happened. So I still, to this day, I don't know if nutrition healed me in 1 minute, and in 1 minute I forgot everything from a minute before that, or if it was just gradual and linear over 3 months where I gradually got better and better. And as I did, how I used to behave just faded from my mind. But my mind had changed in such a fundamental way that it was completely foreign to me to do the least extreme example, the most moderate example of any of the irrational behaviors I had been doing before was completely foreign to me.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I was like, damn.
Bring
Like
on the
something
liver.
changed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. See, so because I'm familiar with Dr. Price and that sort of work. My question is there now research that exists that ties something like fat soluble vitamins or just a good whole food, properly prepared, nutrient dense diet correlating to your actual teeth? Right? Because that was his thing. He was going around and he was looking at people's jaw structures and facial skeletons and...
Yeah, so even in Price's time, I think the most compelling evidence in live humans comes from Price's time. So both Weston Price and completely independently Edward Mellenby, who was working in Britain and he's credited with as being one of the discoverers of vitamin D. Around the same time, with no known communication between each other, they both independently showed that you could reverse active tooth decay without doing any oral surgery. In other words, they don't drill out the tooth and put a filling. They just have these people eat food.
Mm-hmm.
And they both showed that you did that with nutrient-dense animal foods that were rich in fat-soluble vitamins.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most compelling evidence, and the fact that they independently replicated each other, I think, is very compelling. What we have more of now is more molecular evidence of how that might work. So we know, for example, that in the tooth, we know if you open up like a textbook that someone would get in dental school on the pathogenesis of dental caries, right, which is a fancy way of saying how do you get cavities. It'll say that there's a constant dynamic balance between mineralization and demineralization in the tooth. And you get cavities when you have a consistent excess of demineralization over mineralization. And so what do we know about mineralization? Well, we know that there are proteins made by the tooth that bind calcium that are responsible for mineralizing the tooth. And those proteins are the tooth cell gets told to make those proteins by vitamins A and D, and vitamin K2, another fat-soluble vitamin, activates those proteins and gives them the ability to bind calcium. So we know right there the fat-soluble vitamins are critical and limiting for the mineralization of teeth. We also know that vitamins A and D will cause stem cells to differentiate, which means basically if some of your tissues get injured, you have this reserve of something that could become a tooth cell or could become a bone cell or could become a fat cell, could do a lot of different things. And those are called stem cells. And if you damage certain things, you need to draw on your stem cells to differentiate, meaning become the type of cell that you're looking for, right? And so in the part of the tooth that gets damaged during a cavity, there are stem cells there waiting to become those tooth cells, and it's vitamins A and D that tell those stem cells to become those tooth cells, and that can explain why Price and Mellenby both showed independently that if you give someone the right diet, you can not drill out the tooth, not fill the tooth, and just have the tooth fix itself.
Would this be vitamin A, vitamin D as an example, specifically from food? So like retinol or like, vitamin D from animal fat or meat versus like a supplement?
So there's no way to differentiate because there's just not enough evidence there. I think right now, whether people choose food or supplements is largely driven by their philosophical beliefs about it. So my bias is to say that it is always better to get your nutrients from foods. But I think that it's less because those nutrients are fundamentally different in supplements and foods. There are some cases where they are, but usually they're not. And with vitamins A and D, they're not. I think it's more that there are so many other nutrients and so many other things in the food that are beneficial that it's hard to replicate with just supplements. And so, vitamins A and D and K are important to tooth mineralization, but they're not the only thing. There's minerals like the calcium and phosphorus that you need. Magnesium can be very important. And then, thing with biological complexity is it's like an onion. You peel away. You can talk about the first layer of the onion, but if you peel that layer back, there's a whole nother layer right underneath it, right? So I told you about vitamins A and D and how they tell the cell to make these proteins. Well, how do they tell the cell to make these proteins? Well, that requires zinc. That requires magnesium. That's the next layer of the onion. As you peel back and peel back and peel back the next layer, ultimately everything is needed for that, and it's when you're using I'm not against supplements, but when you're using supplements, you're depending on your correct understanding of what it is about those foods that do that thing you're looking for. And our knowledge about that is always evolving, and you're just more likely to run into holes when you're using supplements.
Mm-hmm. Because you could, like, with a supplement, because a lot of it's based on ratios, right? So it's like if you get too much of one nutrient, you could throw off the balance of another one.
Yeah, you can. I mean, I should revise that a little bit. So I think when you're using supplements, you're more likely to have gaps in your knowledge and understanding that are influencing this. When you're using food, you're more likely to have gaps that are driven by food sometimes being incomplete. So like you can have the liver of an animal that is grown in a certain area that is nowhere near as rich in selenium as you would have expected it to be because the soils were deficient in selenium there, right? And so there's I have a food first paradigm, but I think it's important not to be against supplements because you can actually have gaps in what leads to success from different areas in either one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. So this brings me to something I want to ask you about, which is detoxification.
Sure.
Because we live in New York City, and this is just a toxic mess of a city we live in. And, I'm in the city basically every single day. I know the air I'm breathing in is terrible. I know around me there's just we're just living in a chemical soup, right? And so it really hit me when I went to I saw a functional doctor like 6-7 months ago, and I did a Genova ion test, and basically it came back like I have low glutathione. I have my body's just not detoxing, and I could see the kind of results of that because I got acne, I got body odor, I got just all of these telltale signs of my body just trying to detox and not. And I thought I had a really good diet, and I feel like when I started implementing more protein into the diet, when I started getting more B vitamins, folate, choline, these sorts of things. I feel like that's starting to turn around. So I'm wondering, like, when it comes to something like detoxification, like, what is the most important things to focus on to make that work right?
Um, well, I mean, this is another example of that onion effect. So I think in your case, what I heard is your glutathione was really low. You started eating more protein, probably got more glutathione because glutathione is made by protein. You happen to have the benefit of having an $850 urinary organic acid plasma amino acid test, and so that that helps a lot, right? Like the best thing to do is to find out what is the missing link in a certain person and fix that thing. A lot of people aren't doing that, and most of those people, doing the full testing like that is cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So look, if you want to detox, I could list out a bunch of things that are important. So when you're talking about detoxing heavy metals, probably the most important thing is your zinc status, because you have an endogenous, meaning made within yourself, chelator of heavy metals, meaning something that binds them and helps you get rid of them, and that's called metallothionein. And that is, if you're exposed to mercury, for example, you'll make more metallothionein to help you, mainly to help sequester it and prevent it from causing trouble, but that also helps you get rid of it too. And the ability for mercury to cause that response is directly dependent on your zinc status. And that's true whether you're zinc deficient, whether you have enough zinc, or even if you have more than enough zinc. The more zinc you get, the greater your ability to chelate those heavy metals. So I think that having enough zinc is one of the top things there. There are also some specific metals that are dealt with through methylation, and mercury kind of falls into this category, but the real big one that does is arsenic. So arsenic detoxification is directly dependent on your ability to methylate the arsenic. And there are studies in some third world countries where arsenic exposure is very high, where giving supplements that support methylation help detoxify the arsenic. So that's been shown in humans. And those are nutrients like folate, B12, and choline are the big ones. And then, although with and magnesium is also important. But again, that onion effect, next layer of the onion is actually, there's some supportive roles for half the other B vitamins, and like you keep going back and actually you find that a lot of the enzymes in the methylation pathway depend on certain minerals, and so you'll start to see the relevance of everything as you probe that. So I think those are the big things for metals, and then the other things you want to detoxify are organic compounds. That means carbon-based things. These are things, instead of metals, they're bigger molecules. If you're exposed to gasoline, there's like benzene and other things in there. If you're exposed to plastics, there's BPA and things like that. Those are organic compounds. And those are generally gotten rid of with in several steps. So the liver is going to put it through 3 phases of detoxification, and nutritionally, the most important part of that is that the liver is going to try to tag these compounds with certain molecules that do 2 things. One is make them less toxic, and the other is make them easier to excrete in the feces or the urine. And there's a bunch of different potential tags that are used for that. I just mentioned methylation. Everything I said about arsenic would apply here with methylation. You mentioned glutathione, so glutathione is one. You mentioned using protein to improve your glutathione status. That's definitely one of the main things that improves glutathione status, but there's also magnesium. There's also your energy status. ATP is important for making glutathione the basic energy currency of the cell. So if you have thyroid problems, or you have diabetes, or you're fasting too much, exercising too much, and not recovering and resting and eating enough, or if you're taking certain supplements, like a lot of people take metformin for anti-aging, and that can lower your ATP levels. A lot of people take berberine for a number of different things, and that can lower your ATP levels. So any of those things can play into your glutathione status. There are a number of B vitamins that are used to recycle glutathione, so that plays into your glutathione status. There are specific proteins that are better than normal protein at helping you make glutathione, and those are whey protein, raw egg white, although there's reasons not to eat raw egg white that are separate from this, but those proteins are in whey protein and raw egg white, and also glycine is needed to make glutathione, and glycine is primarily found in skin and bones. So eating the whole animal instead of just the muscle meat is a way to improve your glycine status. Glycine doesn't just make glutathione, but it's also one of the tags that's used directly in helping you get rid of those things. So for example, just to throw one out there, aspirin is detoxified with glycine. So there's glutathione, there's methylation, there's glycination, there's sulfation, so sulfur becomes very important.
From like a cruciferous vegetable?
So cruciferous vegetable, Epsom salts would also be a source of sulfur. Animal protein would also be a source of sulfur. When you eat red meat, actually eggs and dairy are the biggest sources of sulfur, where you're getting amino acids that contain the sulfur, and you break them down and you harvest the sulfur from them. But yeah, there are also sulfur compounds in cruciferous vegetables as well. You could Google low sulfur diet to see all the things that someone on a low sulfur diet needs to avoid, and those are all the things that you could eat to get the sulfur. But you can keep going on down the list, and it starts to become a lot easier to say, like, look, if you want to detoxify, you eat a really good diet.
Sure.
This is a really good diet, and just lay it out. Because there are so many reasons. Like glutathione doesn't just detoxify things. It's a key regulator of protein function that controls hundreds of different proteins. And one of the biggest things it does is make your mucus more fluid in your lungs, and also creates an endogenous bronchodilator that is the reason that if you're healthy, you don't have asthma. And so it's not just about detoxification, right? So like you can as you start to lay out all the things that support detoxification, they really line up very nicely with all the things that you should do anyway.
So why would somebody need to detoxify? Is this a thing that we should be consciously trying to do, or is it one of those things that's just like, I poop and pee, I'm fine?
Everyone always detoxifies, otherwise they'd be dead.
Of course.
Yeah.
But if you're not,
you'd be dead from eating vegetables if you weren't detoxifying.
Because vegetables don't help you detoxify?
No, because vegetables are toxic. So our detoxification system did not evolve to handle plastic.
Okay. Makes sense.
And first of all, our detoxification system is older than humans. Like a rat has this, a mouse has this, right? So we're talking about, we're not even like if it were just unique to humans, we'd be talking about 200 million years ago. But it's not. I don't remember when we evolutionarily diverged from lab rats, but it was longer than 200 million years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So these systems didn't evolve to foresee the possibility that humans would make plastic.
Right.
Our detoxification system has nothing to do with the things that we're detoxifying in our modern environment. Our detoxification system evolved for a very simple reason, which is that it is not possible to get nutrients without getting toxins, because all foods are toxic, especially plant foods, but everything is toxic and everything is beneficial. And some things are so toxic that there's no way that their nutrient value can ever hold a candle to their toxicity value, and those are the things that we talk about as toxic.
Is this like the idea that if you eat something, just the process of your body processing, I mean, you create free radicals, right? Like if you make ATP.
No, I'm not talking about. I mean, that's true, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm talking about is the fact that okay, let's take. I did my doctoral work in green tea, so let me take green tea as an example. You drink a cup of green tea. In this green tea, there are a class of chemicals called catechins, which are the these fall under the broader spectrum of what some people would call phytochemicals or phytonutrients, or what scientists would call polyphenols. But these are the specific ones in green tea. And if you, a lot of energy drinks might have some of these added. People might take supplements of green tea extract. The one that's most famous is EGCG, and people take this to promote fat burning. They take it to stabilize their blood glucose. They take it as an antioxidant. They take it as an anti-inflammatory. And there's three other ones that all sound the same. So there's EGCG, there's EGC, there's ECG, and there's EC. But they're all catechins, okay? So what happens to these when you drink a cup of green tea? Well, the first thing that happens is your small intestine does everything that it can do to stop you from absorbing them. So just actively, like some comes in, it pumps it out. Some comes in, it pumps it out. Some comes in, it pumps it out, right? So you absorb about 1% of these things.
Really?
Then the intestine is like, damn, this is just toxic. And so it starts, the intestine has a small ability to detoxify things like the liver does. So it starts detoxifying them. Then some of it gets into the liver, and the liver's like, man, how did this get in here? Starts detoxifying them. How do you know that? Well, if you look at someone's blood after they drink a cup of green tea, you don't see any of the stuff that was in the green tea. You see the methylated metabolites. Those are the things that have gone through the liver's detoxification system to some degree in the intestine, mostly in the liver, and out the other end has been this thing that's been tagged with, in this case, methylation to decrease its activity and to make it easier to excrete. 24 hours later, where are all those things? They're in the urine. There's none left. This is the complete opposite of a nutrient. The nutrient in the small intestine says, ooh, we need a lot of this. And it invests a lot of energy in sucking the nutrient in. And then the nutrient goes through and it gets stored, or it gets activated, or it gets put into some enzyme or whatever. And then you hold on to it. Like you eat a molecule of folate, it travels into your muscle cell, stays there for 200 days. Eventually you have loss of the nutrients, and you're always trying to absorb things, but you treat them completely opposite, right? So what happens when you take these tiny drops of green tea catechins that make it into our bloodstream? What happens if you drop them on cells? What happens is the cells make more glutathione. They have greater antioxidant protection. They're better at detoxifying. Why? Because the cell said, oh boy, look, we have toxins here. And it started ramping up its defense against toxins. Okay. But what happens if you take, imagine that we did not reject 99% of the green tea catechins. They all came in, and they didn't get methylated. They all just got dumped on our cells. Well, we can replicate what that would be like by taking those concentrations and dumping them on cells. What happens to those cells? It's not that they have more glutathione and they have better antioxidant and detoxification defenses. It's that they die.
Right.
Right?
This makes sense.
So we're rejecting them because they will kill our cells. We are making better defenses against them because they will kill our cells. We are responding to them as toxins by becoming better detoxifiers. Okay? So we didn't want to die 200 million years ago, but we also didn't try to detoxify BPA because we weren't making plastic cups. There's chemicals like this in all of the plant foods that we eat, right? So yes, we might say like this mushroom is toxic. What we mean is that our detoxification system can't handle that mushroom. But everything else is toxic too. We just don't talk about it that way because our detoxification system can handle it. And so we evolved to say, look, this environment is toxic. What am I going to do? I'm going to beat that environment. I'm going to win against it.
Right.
I'm going to be a better detoxifier. I'm going to detoxify all this crap in the plant food kingdom, and I'm going to take up all the nutrients.
So the whole purpose then of something like antioxidants that we make in our body was because plants and food was toxic. So we built up the resistance.
Yeah, and like you had said before, we also generate toxic byproducts of our own metabolism, and so that's part of it. But yeah, from the point of view of facing the outside world, then yes, the purpose of that system is to detoxify the toxins that are inevitable to encounter when we are getting our nutrients. We didn't have vitamin pills back then.
Right.
Right? And so compare that to what happens when we're exposed to gasoline, what happens when we're exposed to plastic cups. The reason these things are so toxic is because we have not spent 200 million years cohabitating with them in our environment. These are the new kids on their block that our detoxification system is not set up for. And so they might cause a detoxification response, but they cause a greater toxicity than they cause a detoxification response.
Right. It just overpowers our system basically.
Right. It's we don't recognize them as well, and so we don't respond as well to them. And so the reason that fruits and vegetables are generally good is through a principle called hormesis, which is a little bit of something bad is good for you. It doesn't mean a little bit of anything that's bad is good for you. It's very specific, right? A little bit of certain things that are bad are good for you because we happen to be very well adapted to those specific things in increasing our responses to them. And luckily for us, the detoxification system is very broad. It's not specific. It's not designed for a specific toxin. And that's good, right? Because like if you were the person who evolved the detoxification system that was highly specific to one toxin, you'd be the person that died off a long time ago when you encountered a new toxin. So because of that, the things that are good at upregulating our defenses, making us make more defenses, make us make more defenses against everything. And so we can eat fruits and vegetables and become better detoxifiers of chemicals in gasoline or chemicals in plastic cups because the detoxification system is so broad. So the problem with the gasoline and the plastic cups is that their toxins are they come in and we don't recognize them.
Right.
So they just stay there and be toxic. So we want other things that we do recognize to increase our general fitness and towards all toxins.
Right. So it's basically like we're using fruits and vegetables to train. Like
Yes.
we're using fruits and vegetables. It's like our pre-protein shake.
Yes.
Like a pre-workout meal.
Yeah, so you could divide it into two things. So the hormetic principle is based on the non-essential nutrient things that are in those fruits and vegetables. So the green tea catechins or other polyphenols. A lot of people, when they talk about antioxidants, they're talking exclusively about these things. I don't agree with that terminology, but yeah, the colorful things, the phytochemicals, those things are the training. But then also there's vitamin C in that fruit and vegetable. There's vitamin E in these foods. There's protein. All the essential nutrients are like your recovery shake, right? So the stress of the workout is depending on the nature of the stress, it might actually be literally destroying, like tearing your muscles apart. But in any case, that's the signal that damn, you better get fit. Then the recovery shake or your post-workout meal or whatever you have, that's supplying the materials to make that fitness.
Right. So that we're not dying every time we walk by a gas station or
Right.
like just walking around the city.
Right. So take this to the what you asked me, what do you eat to detoxify? So the polyphenols in the fruits and vegetables and the teas and the spices, those are your training. And then everything else I was talking about, like you need folate and you need B12 and you need protein, those are the raw materials for you to create the fitness in response to the training provided by the polyphenols.
And so you think you can get a sufficient amount of, let's call it for lack of a better phrase, like training from just food? Or because you were saying maybe it's not, you don't favor supplements, you favor food over supplementation, but in the case that maybe you're deficient, maybe like, you were on a vegan diet, I was on a vegan diet for a little while, and I was deficient in all this stuff. So, seeing my test results come back.
You were vegan when you had the Genova Ion panel?
No, I had stopped being vegan for probably 5-6 months when I got the Genova Ion.
Okay.
And so,
But were you still like vegan-ish?
No, no, I flipped over pretty hard.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I was just drowning in
Okay.
eggs and bacon and all
Yeah.
this, you know. But yeah, so it came back. It's like my B12 is like way low, and then my arsenic was real high, and then my glutathione
Well, that
was
lines
real
up
low.
very well with what I was saying before, because B12 is a methyl donor nutrient, and arsenic is the metal that I had identified as needing methylation to get rid of.
Yeah, I mean, it's textbook because I didn't know that at first. So I was looking at that and I was like, holy shit, where's all this arsenic coming from? And then I what you just said, exactly what I had read before.
Right. So, look, on your vegan diet, you may, depending on what you were eating as a vegan, I mean, you can eat a vegan junk food diet, but if you're eating a whole foods plant-based vegan diet, you're probably going to have plenty of the hormetic signal. You're just going to be lacking the raw materials. So on a vegan diet, you don't have enough protein to make glutathione. On a vegan diet, you had so B12 is less of a day-to-day nutrient, it's more of a year-to-year nutrient, and so you were still B12 deficient 5 or 6 months after being vegan. Like that day that you got the Genova Ion panel, like the protein that you had for breakfast is very strongly influencing your glutathione of that day. But the B12 was impacted by the last like 5 years of B12 intake, right? So you were still deficient in that. You were deficient in the raw materials in the vegan diet, not the hormetic signal.
Okay.
A lot of people on a standard, like the standard American diet, are not deficient in at least some of the signals. They're probably getting enough protein to make glutathione. They might be missing some things, but they might be missing the hormetic signal because they're not eating 5 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting delineation of hormetic signal versus raw materials. The raw materials to actually make something like glutathione, and then versus like the signaling to say, well, now we need to make. Is that kind of like what you're talking about?
Yeah, and I mean, if you were to design a diet that was meant to give you everything you need, it would not look like a vegan diet or a carnivore diet or a standard American diet. It would, like vegans have to happen to be very good at eating fruits and vegetables usually. Mm-hmm. A lot better than carnivores.
Right. And then like vegan sausage.
Carnivores are a lot better at eating meat.
So what do you think of that diet, the carnivore diet then? Because I see carnivores say, oh, well, it's not a nutrient deficient diet.
Yeah, they're basing that on a combination of their emotions and their experience. So like, and I'm not saying that disparagingly, but the main train of logic that a carnivore uses to conclude that is, I've been on this diet for a year and I don't have scurvy, therefore my diet's not deficient in vitamin C.
Right.
Right. And so it's very natural for people to generalize from their own experience, which is a very bad idea. People do it in 2 ways. They generalize from their own experience to other people, and I think people are usually they usually do that, but that's the area where they can see the holes most easily and quickly when they're pointed out to them, because someone else can say, well, I went on a vegan diet for 5 years and I've been really healthy, and suddenly they have to contend with someone else's experience. What people have an even greater difficulty doing, though, is combating the tendency to generalize to themselves. And so, look, like, take this person. The thing is, like, so a carnivore diet will never give you the vitamin C of the RDA unless you eat obscure organ meats like adrenal glands and pituitaries and stuff like that. If you eat a lot of liver, it's going to be pretty decent. But even if you eat a diet that's all steak and it's not overcooked, you're going to get some vitamin C in that. And look, if you take someone and put them on a 0 vitamin C diet, they're probably going to get scurvy in a few months, or at least like early signs of scurvy, especially if leading up to that they didn't have a very vitamin C rich diet. If they had a very vitamin C rich diet, maybe it's going to take 6 months or longer. But a carnivore diet's not 0 vitamin C. And so if you're getting like 10 milligrams of vitamin C a day from from not overcooked steak, I don't know how long it's going to take you to get scurvy. It could be like 3 to 5 years, right? And so to generalize from the first year of your experience to there's no vitamin C deficiency in this diet is it's not logical based on external data about what we know about the vitamin C requirement. It's logical based on the perception of the experience, and then generalizing from that, like taking that as the evidence and saying like it worked for me, it must be adequate. If it must be adequate, then the RDA for the vitamin C must not apply to carnivores or something like that. And they can come up with some fancy argument about why that's probably true, but there's no evidence for it.
Right.
So I I think the reason that people are having success for it is because, or with it rather, is because they happen to be very well, like the set of problems that they have happens to be very well suited to the kind of problems that a carnivore diet can fix. And that's probably that they are intolerant to, to multiple different plant compounds in plant foods, right? So we were just talking about the toxins in plant foods. Like one way that you could see someone having trouble with plant foods is maybe their ability to have that adaptive response caps off earlier. And so imagine that this is, what I was saying about green tea. It sort of must be true that there is some limit or some law of diminishing returns about your dose of green tea, and then you must be able to cross some threshold where it just becomes harmful. And there's actually a body of literature on liver failure caused by green tea supplements. There's no case reports from drinking green tea, but there are from taking green tea pills, and you can, or EGCG and green tea extract, and you can question some of those cases, like maybe there was a contaminant or something like that, but it's probably the case that like every individual person has, what you're trying to do with that supplement is you're trying to increase using your sort of like reserves of potential detox capacity, or you're trying to activate those in response to that supplement. But everyone's going to have a different max potential reserve capacity for detoxification. So if you throw a hormetic stressor at it, maybe you cross that threshold and you didn't realize it because your threshold is low. And that's sort of like, what's overtraining to one person is not overtraining to another person. Like one thing, CrossFit might like wreck someone if they do it once a week.
We call those pussies.
Oh, yeah.
I say that 5 minutes in, I'm done.
Yeah. Okay. So some people are green tea pussies,
right?
And
yeah.
They get liver failure.
We got other words for them, but
you agreed. Yeah, that's yeah. You're the ER doc. I can see you being the ER doc and being like, "What are you, a green tea pussy?"
Yeah. What is that? A bullet hole? Get out of here.
Yeah. So right. Okay, so carnivores are plant pussies.
Right. Finally, someone's saying it. Someone with the balls to say it.
Yeah. And so there's a more technical explanation of that, maybe they're like, maybe they don't, there's a bunch of things in plant foods, right? And you can have intolerances to any of them, and I think people who do well on carnivore probably have intolerances to multiple of them, right? Otherwise, they would have found like a low oxalate diet or something like that worked for them first. Although, carnivore is sort of like can shortcut finding the actual thing that you're intolerant to. Like maybe you're just intolerant to one thing that's in a bunch of plants, and instead of doing the work to try to find that one thing, you're just like, oh, I'll go carnivore, cut out all the potential problems in plants, and then you accidentally cut out the one thing that was giving you a problem.
Right. And because it's like because I watch a lot of vegan YouTube. This is like my guilty pleasure. And it's like whenever somebody leaves veganism and they're like, well, it's because I had like IBS or I had like some gut thing. And they're like, well, here's like 50 studies that show you that a plant-based diet can't give you IBS or how you can turn it around with a plant-based diet. And I mean, I've personally talked to people who are like, I cannot eat beans, like specifically like black beans or kidney beans, or I can't eat kale because it just wrecks my stomach. I just get bloated and gassy. And so there, I mean, there has to be something in these plant foods that's just
Can
wrecking
you
people.
imagine trying to do a low FODMAP vegan diet?
I can barely imagine a regular low FODMAP diet, let alone.
Yeah, a lot of people with IBS are FODMAP pussies.
Yeah, they are. God damn those FODMAP pussies. I think about like they do like vegan keto too, which just sounds like a nightmare. I mean, that just sounds like insane amounts of coconut oil, and I mean, I don't even know where you go from there.
Yeah, those are those are meat carb pussies.
Meat carb pussies. Get over yourself. Stop eating that fucking coconut oil. Yeah, the whole like extreme diet thing, it's just, you know, it's a meme if anything else. It's like, follow me, my Instagram, because I imagine like these people at some point, whether they're carnivore, vegan, keto, they're going to hit a point where the diet has to be rotated to something else. Like you got to start getting some more variety in there.
Yeah, I think so. One of the principles that I think is helpful to borrow from economics is you got to diversify your portfolio. And so, you know, in economics, like you can decide that you want all of your retirement account to be in real estate. But if you do that, you should probably pay attention to the real estate market. Or you can just tell the retirement people to put this in whatever your algorithm says it should be in, and you can forget about it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's sort of the same thing where like there are certain principles of diversification that you need to make to get all your nutrients in and to moderate your toxin load too, right? Like if all your plants are beans, there's just certain things in those beans that might give you GI distress or whatever that you're getting a lot more of than if you diversified across beans, potatoes, fruits, and a couple other sources of carbohydrate. But also your nutrients, like beans are just very high in certain minerals. Potatoes are higher in other things, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you follow those principles of diversification, then you can kind of set it and forget it. Like you can kind of just take your mind off that and focus on other things. Whereas if you start restricting categories from that, then you start needing to micromanage. Mm-hmm. And that's why like if you look at the American Dietetics Association's position paper on vegan diets, and I don't really agree with their conclusion, but they say that a well-planned vegan diet can be great. I don't remember the exact wording. But I remember that they say well-planned. And the significance of that is it's sort of an implicit acknowledgement of the fact that if you're vegan, you got to plan it more, right? Yeah. And the same thing is if you're keto or if you're low FODMAP or, you know, pick your dietary restriction, when you are reducing the diversity of your nutritional economic portfolio, then you need to become an expert in that space that you're managing, and you need to do more micromanaging. And that becomes a little bit true when you make one restriction, but then it just exponentially increases. Like if you make 3 restrictions, it's like important to the to the third power, right? Mm-hmm. And it just and so
it becomes more stressful than anything else to try to follow it.
I think it becomes more stressful to do a good job following it, but I think most people are not going to stress themselves. They're probably convinced by some ideology that they don't need to micromanage it, and so instead they're just a lot less robust to error, and they're more likely to encounter deficiency. Mm-hmm. Right? Like the vegan keto person's probably not sitting there saying, well, when I removed carbs, I removed the beans that were providing my molybdenum. I removed the strawberries that were giving me vitamin C. They're probably not doing that. They're probably just convinced that vegan keto is the way to go, and they're like, oh, I'm going to get everything that I need. I think the average person doesn't have a medical problem that's big enough to motivate them to go on a diet that they know is deficient in nutrients, right? Like when I was vegan, it actually caused a significant amount of cognitive dissonance in me to read about why I should be supplementing with vitamin B12, because I felt like if my ethics were that it's wrong to eat animal foods, and if that meant that I had to solve the health problem that I would inevitably have by taking an industrially produced supplement, then there must be something wrong with my ethics, because they don't accord very well with reality.
Oh my God.
Right. So that was some cognitive dissonance for me, and not everyone's going to have that problem. Like, not everyone believes that. I think for me, I have a greater need to believe in like universal ethical principles, whereas a lot of vegans just say like, well, now it is unethical to eat meat because we can make meat in the lab, right?
Right.
And so they have a much more fluid ethical system that says these are the ethics according to today's environment. And so there's a personality type issue there, but I think, most people aren't vegans, right? And so the question is like, digging from a random sample of people who decide to adopt some diet, there's a very high chance that those people are not going to adopt that diet if they know that it makes them deficient in certain nutrients. And I think people have that need, and that's one of the reasons why there's so many carnivores saying that this diet's not deficient in vitamin C. It's because it's not just that they assume that based on their experience, it's also that they have a need to believe that if this is the right diet, it must not be inevitably causing problems.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, that would mean that it's not the right diet, right?
Right.
And so they adopted it not just because it was like, oh, this will fix this problem that I have, but they probably adopted it along with a bunch of motivating context, like this is the real original human diet and all kinds of things like that.
And who needs vitamin C? Really? Is it necessary?
Well, yeah, I mean that's what comes up is like, the argument would be something like, well, the standard American diet increases your need for vitamin C, and the carnivore diet reduces your need for vitamin C, and the RDA is inflated because the RDA was based on data and a bunch of people eating a bad diet. And it's not that that's not a possibility. It's just that you can't conclude that on the basis of you ate a carnivore diet for a year and didn't get scurvy.
Yeah, right. And it's the same thing on the other side too. You were saying it earlier about like this vegan stuff where it's like, well, you don't need as much protein as they tell you that you need as much protein. And so, when someone asks a vegan, like, where you get your protein, it's not where I get my protein. It's like, you don't need as much protein as you think you need. And I kind of actually buy into that a little bit. But from my own personal experience, I know I need more protein than I was getting when I was on a vegan diet.
Yeah. They're like, I get it from broccoli, bitch.
Yeah, that's right. What are you, an idiot?
Yeah, I don't know. The evidence, if anything, I think suggests that you need more protein than the RDA. So the RDA for protein is based on what is the amount of protein you need to eat to make sure that you're not peeing out more nitrogen than you're consuming. Mm-hmm. And there's, one of the problems with that line of reasoning is that you conserve nitrogen when your nitrogen intake is low. And so the point at which your body is going to be able to, like if you put someone on a protein deficient diet, what will happen is they'll start peeing out less and less nitrogen because they're trying to conserve it. And to be so deficient in protein that you cannot have nitrogen balance, meaning you are still peeing out more nitrogen than you're taking in, that basically means you've gotten to the point where your body couldn't adapt anymore. But to set that as the RDA implies that there's nothing wrong with the adaptations. But actually there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't want to have all those adaptations. Those because that's the adaptations are basically like you won't break down malfunctioning proteins as often, right? Because then you lose the nitrogen. But like you kind of want to break down malfunctioning proteins and replace them with good proteins, right?
But does that apply then to like the difference between like a plant-based protein and like an animal source protein, where you're getting more of the amino acids versus that plant protein?
In general, the biological value of an animal protein is higher than a plant protein. It's higher in essential amino acids. I would add a nuance to that though, which is that animal protein is very rich in an amino acid called methionine, which increases your need for a different amino acid called glycine. And glycine is found in skin and bones. So the implication, I think, is that the more muscle meat you eat, the more skin and bones you should eat, which basically means that to the extent you eat animals, you should eat the whole animal. And I think running low on glycine is a specific problem of the modern way we approach animal products, which is we're going to breed this chicken to have really, really, really big breasts. Then we're going to take the skinless, boneless chicken breasts and we're just going to eat that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a problem. The vegan diet has a different problem, which is that it doesn't have enough protein, and the protein that it has is lower biological quality. So it's not an either or really. It's that it's yeah. I mean the difference between the first difference between plant and animal protein is a check in the bucket. It's a win for animal protein, which is that animal protein is higher in biological quality, higher in the essential amino acids. You need less of it to get the same value in terms of your protein requirement.
When you say biological quality, like what specifically do you mean?
Amount and balance of the 8 essential amino acids.
Mm-hmm. Versus plant-based, does plant have 7 amino acids or also 8?
No, there's all eight essential amino acids are found in plant proteins, but they're distributed unevenly compared to animal products, and they're also lower as a proportion of the protein compared to animal products. Also, plant products are just lower in protein. Also, the protein is less absorbable, right? So the amount of essential amino acids that you're absorbing on a vegan diet is way less than on an omnivorous diet, because there's less protein, it's lower in certain essential amino acids, it's less absorbable, and all of those sort of combine to make your protein status lower.
So do you think then, if you were like, I need to get protein, plain skinless chicken breast or kale?
That is the protein pussy picks the kale.
Yes.
That's a laughable comparison, because the only way you could there's nothing wrong with kale. Like, I eat kale. Like, kale's good, right? But it's not a good source of protein. And the reason is that the only way you can make kale out to be a good source of protein is by looking at it on a per calorie basis.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not realistic, because no one can eat the amount of kale that you would need to yield the amount of protein that you would want, or that you should have.
So
it's just physically impossible.
So like a good plant protein would, I don't know, mushrooms or legumes. Okay. Yeah. So
lentils,
like
peas, and
lentils,
beans.
right?
That's where you get protein from.
So lentils versus white, skinless, boneless chicken breast.
So on the plus side for the lentils, the lentils have a better balance between methionine and glycine. They're not going to tax your glycine status as much. On the minus side, the lentils are lower in protein. The protein's a little bit less absorbable, and the content and balance of essential amino acids in it means that you would have to eat a little bit more protein from the lentils than you would have to eat from the boneless, skinless chicken breast to do basic things with protein that you think of as contributing to your protein requirement, like, for example, build muscle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I would take the lentils over the skinless, boneless chicken breast. If I'm looking for
if you're looking for what?
Good protein. Like protein.
Good protein is vague. So if you're looking to build muscle, you want the skinless, boneless chicken breast.
Mm-hmm.
But you should take a glycine supplement or collagen along with it.
Okay.
Fix that balance problem. If you're let's see. If you don't want to tax your glycine status, the lentils are better.
Mm-hmm.
But the better thing is like some chicken, and some lentils cooked in chicken stock that you made with the bones.
Ah, there we go.
Like, why are we choosing between chicken and lentils?
Because I'm trying to give lentils like the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, let's see if there's a plant protein that could knock out an animal protein.
Let me make another point about lentils. So, lentils and other legumes are lentils, peas, and beans. they are very rich in a mineral called molybdenum, which you need to handle sulfur properly. Skinless, boneless chicken breast is very rich in methionine, which is not only going to tax your glycine status, but it also is going to generate sulfite, which is toxic and will become beneficial when it's converted into sulfate.
Mm-hmm.
And so a diet that is rich in meat and low in legumes is the diet that most promotes sulfite accumulation.
Mm-hmm.
Sulfite is toxic. It will give you a deficiency of thiamine, which is vitamin B1. It'll give you a deficiency of vitamin B6. And it can cause other things that are it can just interfere with protein function, to cause a bunch of other toxic effects as well. And so that's a plus in the legume bucket too, in the lentil bucket. And the lentils are also a very good source of folate. The chicken breast is not. And so liver in the animal bucket, liver is a very good source of folate, but that's pretty much it. Pastured egg yolks, where the chickens eat mostly grass, are probably a very good source of folate. But besides liver and specifically pastured egg yolks, most animal foods aren't that great a source of folate, whereas greens and legumes are awesome sources of folate. So look, like there's a trade-off, and this is what I was talking about, diversification, right? Like your meal, the best nutrient-dense meal here would be you take the chicken breast, you can keep the skin on or take the skin off, whatever you want. But if you take the skin off, then all the more important that you include some of the bones. And so like you could make bone stock, and you could cook the lentils together with some green vegetables or something like that, and you eat that on the side. Like that would be a pretty good meal.
Which sounds like a reasonable, like realistic meal that people would probably eat.
That's like what your grandmother said about eating a balanced meal.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
She had a point.
Right. Not this crazy just beans and salad, no meat. And red meat too. I mean, red meat is I mean, would you place that in the same place as maybe like a boneless skinless chicken breast? Or red meat has a lot more nutrition from what I understand.
I think the nutritional profile is different. There are certain things that are higher in red meat. It's probably true that overall the nutrition is higher in red meat, but it's not going to be universally true. But yeah, I think red meat is good for most people. I think a lot of the cultural stuff is a little backwards. Like probably the people who need to eat the most red meat are young women. But they probably eat the least red meat.
But they're drinking juice. They're getting smoothies.
Yeah,
they're drinking fruit juices and juice fasts and liver flushes.
Yeah, yeah. Just eat some steak.
Just eat some steak.
Yeah,
eat some steak, you bitch. Okay, so we're getting kind of close to the end here. I did want to ask you this. Hypothetical.
Yeah.
You go out drinking. You're a man on the town. You're out there in the village.
Yeah.
You toss a few. You throw some microdosing of some alcohol back. It's 1 a.m. You're walking the streets of New York City. What is your junk food?
My junk food. Oh God. This is sort of like you're asking the wrong person, because drinking doesn't, like, if I eat junk food, it's because I'm with friends who eat junk food when they drink.
Okay. So you're in that situation.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, I got to go home and I got to take a handful of salt, down a glass of water, drink a bottle of Gerolsteiner, take 2 potassium citrate capsules, 2 calcium, 1 magnesium, because I'll sleep better. If I have 4 or more drinks, I get insomnia, and it goes away with a large amount of salt, other electrolytes, and water.
So you drink the salt before you go to bed?
Yeah. Well, or I forget, and I'm like, why am I not falling asleep? And then I get up and take it. But yeah, I guess like if I were to eat junk food in Manhattan, what might it be? It might be pizza.
Pizza.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific?
I'm with drunk friends that get naughty when they eat drunk.
Yep.
Yeah.
So pizza's like your go-to like junk food?
Yeah, I don't know. Like my junk food is sort of like very socially allocated. I tend to eat like a robot when I'm by myself, and I don't really have like deep unconscious drives to eat junk food that come out when I drink. Like,
Interesting.
It's like I loosen up a little bit when I drink, but it's like a mild personality change, and it's not like the junk food Chris came out.
You won't sing karaoke. You'll just be in the
Oh
in the
no,
corner with
I'll sing karaoke, but I would sing karaoke sober.
Okay. All right. Who's a crazy person then?
Oh, I've sung karaoke sober.
Yeah.
Totally do it.
That's insanity. I don't know if that's happened anywhere, any other time in history.
Hang out with more 20-year-olds. Like if they don't all have fake IDs and they want to do karaoke, they're going to do it sober.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. That's like a field trip then at that point.
Yeah. I don't know. Like if you ask me like what are my favorite junk foods, I would say pizza and ice cream would be my favorite junk foods.
That's dope. Yeah. What's your favorite pizza in New York?
Honestly, probably a good cheese pizza. Very, very simple.
Do you have a spot like a Joe's, a John's?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just don't do this very often. Like, I go to Alba's around the corner every once in a while to get pizza.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't eat enough pizza to like have a pizza place in the city that I go to.
Yeah. So when people come visit you in New York, they must just hate you because they're like, Chris, where's the best pizza? You're like,
Yeah, I'm like I'll pull out Yelp. That's what I'll do.
There you go. Oh, it's the worst when you're a holistic a-hole and people want to know where the junk food is. You're like, I can't help you. Check Yelp. Other people know better.
Yeah. Oh, is this how that came out? You had friends who were like, "Where's the best pizza?" And you were like, "I'm holistic, you asshole."
Yeah,
I don't eat pizza.
Yeah,
bitch.
I guess so. That's where it came from. You son of a bitch. You know I don't do that. Actually, I'm a tour guide in the city, and so I take people around, and all they want to do is just eat crap, and they're like, "Where's the best crap?" And I'm like, "There's a salad place around the corner. There's a good paleo restaurant right over here. You might like." I got to tell them just the shittiest garbage, like Joe's up the street. It's good. So, well, this was fun. This was great.
Yeah.
I think I definitely am going to listen to this again just to take notes. There was a lot of good stuff here. I think we definitely broke down some barriers here, educated the folks out there, and probably started a few controversies along the way. So that's how you know it was good.
Yeah.
So I thank you for your time.
I think we offended a couple people.
Definitely. Well, then it wouldn't be a good holistic a-hole podcast
No.
if we didn't. I know you have some good stuff out there. If you want to let the listeners know where they can find you, what kind of programs you got going on.
Yeah, so I'm at chrismasterjohnphd.com. I'm at Chris Masterjohn on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, tiny bit on Snapchat, and on YouTube. My two big things that people can check out now are I have a comprehensive guide to managing nutritional status called Testing Nutritional Status, the Ultimate Cheat Sheet. This is what people would want if they want a kind of have their hand held through a system to look at their signs and symptoms, look at their lab tests, look at their dietary analysis, and depending on what resources they have available in terms of how much time they want to spend or how much money they want to spend, find the best approach for them to figure out what nutritional deficiencies, toxicities, or imbalances they might best have, what to do about it, and how to make sure that's working. And I'll give your listeners a 20% discount on that, and they can use the link that we put in the show notes to get that. And then I also have a free class called Vitamins and Minerals 101. This is it's less practical and less of a system of managing nutritional status. It's more of an educational tour through the vitamins and minerals. And this is comes in the form of an email or Facebook message each day where you get one lesson on each nutrient. So the first day you'll get a lesson on vitamin A, and that's like, what is vitamin A? Why is it important? What foods is it in? How do you get enough with food? How do you know if you have too much? And, should you think about supplementing? And it's educational. It's fun. It's geared at people who don't necessarily have any background besides high school and who are curious enough to take 30 lessons about each nutrient, but don't have any background in nutrition. There are a bunch of people who do have backgrounds in nutrition who love it, though, because either they and they may even be experts and professionals in nutrition, they still love it because either it's a good refresher for them and or they find little nuggets in each lesson where they're like, oh, I spend my life doing this and I didn't even know that little thing. That's helpful, right? And so so I have the full spectrum of like super beginners to experts who are taking it. And yeah, it's fun. So you can sign up for email or Facebook Messenger. The Facebook Messenger one is a little more fun, a little more interactive, and is taught by Chris Masterbot, who is my baby bot. So it's a little fun on the techie side of things. But yeah, people can sign up again using the links in your show notes.
Yep, and I will say I did sign up for the Facebook Messenger 101 class the other day, and I got my first message today from Chris Masterbot, cool. And it was a little freaky because I thought it was you canceling the interview, and I was like, okay, cool, man. What's up? Oh, vitamin A, sounds good with the eyes, gotcha. But yeah, I definitely vouch for it.
You were like, Masterjohn, what are you, a podcast pussy?
Yeah, he's hitting me up at 7 a.m. This guy's insane. So, well, cool. Well, thank you, Dr. Chris Masterjohn, PhD. This was a blast. Hopefully we can do a round 2 sometime, follow up, and by that time, maybe you got a new video game out, which would be so cool.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
So be sure to check out chrismasterjohnphd.com, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah.
Yo, a-holes, just a few quick things here before you head out. If you love the podcast, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. Go on iTunes, leave a 5-star review. Make sure you follow me on all the social mediums, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Holistic A-Hole. If you want to join in on the health conversations we got going on, you could jump into the Bro Health Facebook group or the Holistic A-Holes Facebook group. Both fun groups, both a lot of great information going on. And if you love the podcast, share it with your friends or people you never met on Instagram. Just do a screenshot of the podcast playing in your phone, put a cool little message up there, tag me at Holistic A-Hole, and I'll be sure to share that on my Instagram story. See how this works? Reciprocation. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Really hope you enjoyed the podcast. Catch you on the next one. Peace.